Welcome to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Friday, June 28th. And joining me, as always, my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, I just picked up a story from Redfin, which, I don't know how much of their own data they do, but they do write about the housing industry. But they're reporting that this is their headline, the typical home is selling for less than list price. This is the first time that has happened in late spring since the start of the pandemic.
I don't know what they're talking about. Because here's why I don't know I don't have access to their data, but I can tell you that what I'm seeing in my data is, the share of listings with a price cut has been pretty high for a while now. I mean, every month there's a good proportion of listings with a price cut. Last month, something like nearly a quarter of listings had a price cut, 23.9%, according to Zillow data. And Zillow has 165 million homes, something like that. I mean, it's almost every home, every single family house in the country, and now multifamily units everywhere. So, I mean, look, this is not a new thing.
Well, the cuts on prices, I think, and I'm being anecdotal here, so I'm not drawing from data. I think those headlines have been flying around regionally since the start of this year, toward the end of last year. I mean, of course, the end of the year is a tough home selling market. The fourth quarter's kind of the wind down. So,
you know what? I don't know why people make so much noise about that metric, because ultimately we still have about 33% of homes selling above list price in April. So you have, people don't quite know how to price their homes, right?
Is that the homeowner's issue or is that their local realtor's issue?
I don't know. Could be a little bit of both. But the bottom line is the market sets the price ultimately, because, when you get there, if you price it too high, your house stays on the market a little bit longer. And homes that are priced correctly are selling in just 13 days. 13 days. That is still crazy fast, right? The doom and gloom stories about the housing market are interesting because, ultimately people are now concerned about a rise in inventory. Yeah, inventory is up, 22% compared to a year ago. But inventory levels are still almost 34% below where they were before the pandemic, right? The total vacancy rate is still very low. Despite if you add the new construction, right, to the resale, vacancy rates are very low still. So, yes, affordability is restricting buyers from moving right now, which basically could mean price growth could ease. And we may even get some price declines because, affordability maybe slows down residential mobility. But does that mean we have a housing crash or some big thing to worry about? No, I think what we want to see is a negative price adjustment. We want to see that price adjustment because it will actually allow more people to move, more people to go ahead with their next chapter, move on with their lives. You got people that had kids, babies, we got married. We want to move into a bigger place, but they can't because mortgage rates are too high. Because, right, I told you last week, I think on the show, the down payment needed for the typical new buyer buying the typical home is almost $130,000, right? That's unbelievable. So I don't know. I don't agree with those types of headlines. I think telling the full story is, look, we have a housing market that's loosening a little bit. It's great. It's something that is absolutely welcome. The market was too tight for too long, preventing people from moving, and essentially having prices easing should be something we celebrate. Should we worry? No. Why? Because the people who are selling their homes. They choose to sell their homes. They're choosing to. They're sitting on record home equity. They're not. Mortgage delinquency rates are still low. The labor market is still strong. People are not desperate to sell right now?
In the big purchase conversations that I'm having, with different people that are talking to me about buying a new house, or people who are talking about buying either a new or used vehicle, there seems to be a prevailing sentiment of, I'm going to wait for the crash, as if there's going to be a massive, sell-off and reduction.
If you're waiting for a crash, my friend, have you ever seen what happens when residential investment drops like crazy?
Well, I think I've lived through that. So, yes.
You want to keep your job, you better not be waiting for a crash. That's all I got to say, right? When do we see the mortgage rates dropping, prices and mortgage rates dropping like crazy? Well, you just have to look around, and it's not too long ago we saw that, right? And it's the unemployment rate shoots up a lot. And we don't want that. Nobody wants that. We want a nice, orderly price easing, in the housing market. We want inventory to rise at a decent pace to provide more options for buyers. We want prices to ease, not crash, right? We want the labor market to remain pretty solid so people can continue to live their lives and go out and move on with their lives, and if they want to rent a place, they rent one. If they want to buy a place, they buy one. We just want to see improvements in housing affordability coming from higher productivity growth that brings on more housing, that sustains wage growth and income growth. That's ultimately what we want to see. So, yeah, I wouldn't pay too much attention to headlines that say, oh, my gosh, prices are getting cut for the first time. No, they're not. We get price cuts and home selling above list every single month. It just so happens that the share of listings with price cuts has increased. It's increased because the housing market is cooling. Let's call it moderating, to make sure we're clear on that for the folks that are out there screaming, doom and gloom every day.
All right. Well, I appreciate your thoughts as always. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.